If you're an owner of an e-commerce brand or just try to sell stuff online and have faced Shopify terminating your store without a notice, then this video is for you. Most probably at some point you believe that you have got the game figured out, you probably registered a new account, perhaps on a new platform, but in the end you got the same result with a new type of termination after you processed just a bit of volume. No matter the kind of business you do, either it's white hat drop shipping or slightly shady, you must watch this video in order to know how to prevent Shopify terminations, understand what is under the hood of the Shopify algorithm, and see what alternatives to Shopify payments you actually have right now. I believe that this video is quite comprehensive, it has some up-to-date information. I'm not trying to gatekeep anything from you, I'm just putting all the cards on the table, just sharing my experience, because I've been working with Shopify and other e-commerce platforms for 4 years now. I've been selling the accounts, so I really have the experience on how to actually work with them so you don't get banned the moment you start getting some sales. In this video we are going to discuss, first and foremost, what is Shopify Payments, why does Shopify terminate your account. We'll talk about the 3 most important risk factors Shopify is looking at. Over my experience in the e-commerce platforms, I have registered and sold way over 500 stores on Shopify, hundreds of accounts with Stripe, Etsy, Whoop, and I really faced all kind of blocks you can get on these platforms. In the final part, we will talk about the alternatives to Shopify Payments. I will name drop the working alternative solution as of 2026 for different kinds of businesses depending on how prohibited they are. We'll touch the cheapest way to formate a company in different jurisdictions. I'll describe how the very best payment orchestration setup that works with us, and you will just generally get a more clear vision of what is actually going on. I will be describing our setup that we currently have for payment orchestration, with the help of which we can process up to $10,000 in a day on some of our brands, such that you can minimize the risk of getting banned. Stay with me until the end because this video is packed with useful information in a concentrated dosage. Overall, in this video I will be sharing some private information which they usually keep behind closed e-commerce communities on Telegram or on Discord, so it's a really worth to watch video in 2026. First and foremost, before trying to fight the cause, we must understand what is Shopify Payments. This will give us more insights and clarity on why it acts the way it acts. Shopify Payments is a Stripe-powered merchant account. These companies are close strategic partners. You don't get individually underwritten when you sign up, you get approved instantly and underwritten later while you're already processing. That's why blocks feel like they come out of nowhere. The risk review happens after the money starts flowing. Shopify's own documentation says your business is evaluated when you first apply for Shopify Payments, and risk is continuously monitored throughout the use of the platform. What that means is that Shopify is onboarding and accepting everyone that has a valid ID card, but then they compensate it by having a very low risk tolerance. So if you fuck up with fulfilling an order, or you got a chargeback, you didn't reply to a customer, your store is getting terminated the very same moment. Shopify holds merchants to a stricter standard than Visa or MasterCard network thresholds, and say so explicitly. The business logic for Shopify is understandable. Acting early protects the platform's overall standing with banks and card networks. A few bad merchants make every Shopify store look riskier to the acquirers. Risk evaluation considers hundreds of signals. It's not an exhaustive published list, and Shopify reserves the right to update the prohibited business list at any time without notice. On top of that, new pressure comes since October 2025, which is Visa's VAMP program. You can research that. It's Visa Acquirer Monitoring Program. It combines fraud reports and disputes into one ratio, so a single friendly fraud chargeback, which is an unlegitimate abuse of the chargeback by the customer, counts twice now. This tightened processes tolerance across the board, including Shopify's. I will now be speaking from my personal and e-commerce comrades' experience, since Shopify never published an explicit guide on how to avoid getting banned. First one, and the most basic one, is selling something on the prohibited or restricted list. Although cliché, using copyrighted names in product title, SEO tags, collection names, or even images alternative text can trigger a manual inspection of the store. You can also trigger it if you sell in any of these high risk categories, which would be like regulated products, cannabis, CBD, prescription drugs, medical devices, tobacco, or if you sell buds or nutraceuticals or pseudo-pharmaceuticals. So basically what are supplements and products making unverified health claims. Also, one of the most basic ones is adult content and products. You can see the full list on the Shopify's official website. If you sell any of this kind of products, you just really have to be smart with it. You still can sell it on Shopify, lower volumes, but it's going to be a bit harder. Second, and I believe the most important ones, are the risk signals, which include the chargeback rates, sudden spikes in the volumes, KYC or KYB mismatches. But once again, this is very dependent on your Shopify account and is different from case to case. What matters in the registration of the Shopify is the geography of your account and the type of account that you have. If you're registered as an individual and not a business, you have a much lower trust factor by default. What I believe is the most important one out of all of these factors is the chargeback rate. Most of the people, and I read this information myself, I kind of agree with it. Most of them say that the chargeback rate should be kept below 1.5%, which means that you have the privilege of one dispute every 100th order. Although I share this opinion, I have some stores and I have some examples where we were working with 4 to 5% of chargeback rate. It was tolerated by Shopify and Stripe, but it only works if you settle the disputes fast, which means that you return the money, swallow the loss of profit, and excuse yourself with a smile. Let's discuss the second factor, which is the volume of sales that you have. Most importantly with this matter is the moderation of how many sales you do in a day or a week before you can come anywhere close to $10,000-$15,000 in volume per week. You cannot risk more than $500 worth of sales per day in the very best scenario after actually warming up your account. And at the beginning of any Shopify store, I recommend warming up the accounts for at least 2 weeks with different billing, shipping, card details for a volume of $500 per week, which is approximately $50 to $100 every working day. And I agree that this is actually very slow and painful at times, but just put the trust in me and try to do this. This will supercharge your reputation with Stripe and will open the gates to actually making any kind of volumes with Shopify. I'm actually convinced that this is the only way to work with Shopify for a beginner in 2026. When in the warm-up phase, you also must set up traffic flow onto your website, which would be 50 to 60 visitors per day, which are not bots. You can just go onto a website, tell them, okay, I will pay you 50 cents, just push 50 bots onto my website. This is not the way to do it. What I usually do is I create a $3 to $5 traffic campaign on Meta, and then the people, usually it's like 50 to 100 clicks on the link. Not all of them, but most of them, most of them actually end up visiting my website, and trust me, Shopify fucking loves it. I believe and I'm actually convinced that this is what fentanyl feels like to Shopify. It's absolutely in love with Facebook traffic. If you get 100 visits a day for at least 2 weeks, and then you do the warming up, which is not this one, let's say $50 a day in 1 or 2 orders. This all combined, 1 to 2 weeks. After that period, you can actually start and load $500 to $1,000 every day. And if you will be facing this kind of volume and you will not have the chargeback rate above, I would say, 5%, considering that you actually fight these cases, then you can scale even bigger, and then your Shopify payments At this stage, it will more or less become bulletproof. It doesn't mean that you can start and sell replicas, but still you have way more trust with it and you can start pushing something maybe slightly more shady. And the third one, which I didn't necessarily experience with Shopify, but some of my colleagues actually told me about, is the trust signals. So if you have fake reviews, or if you have slow fulfillment or misleading listings on your website, it can actually trigger the Shopify termination as well. I have heard about this story. I never got banned for any of these reasons because I always fulfill on time. I generate the reviews quite smartly, so Shopify can't tell that it's a fake one. So maybe it could become a reason for someone should consider it as well. And then the fourth one, which isn't in my opinion really discussed about, is the cross-account history. So what Shopify does, it evaluates historical patterns across any businesses that you operate. Then they block your store if they notice the same browser fingerprint, IP or device signature, and many other things. And I believe I will make a full video on how to correctly set up your desktop such that you can manage 20 different stores correctly with different devices, IPs and other important settings, such that a previously terminated store doesn't lead to a new termination of the store. If you do everything on the same desktop with two different Chrome profiles, you're going to get terminated by Shopify as soon as one of the stores gets under the radar. Figure out how to warm up the Shopify accounts, how to cheaply load real human traffic onto the website, how to get different card details. You can use for that neobanks, usually registered on US LLCs. They will allow you to generate anywhere to like 500 cards, use different billing and shipping details, and only then you can actually work and scale up with Shopify. Now you can screenshot and save this rules of thumb from Shopify Payments, which is an absolutely not AI generated, trust me, wink wink picture, but basically it covers everything that I have mentioned before. I will only add a few points to the chargeback ratio. Here it's 0.5%. I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to say something more to 1.5%. And then you have tools, which would be, for example, charge flow.io, which you can really natively integrate into Shopify. You will need to figure how this one works, but it can actually help you lower the percentage and keep it handled even if you have friendly chargeback fraud. Always refund if you have an option, especially if you have a crazy high marginality. It doesn't cost you anything to refund the customer. It will keep your account's health sane. Also set a somewhat honest delivery windows. I know how it is with the suppliers. You can't always know the exact terms when they will deliver it. Sometimes they go on weekends, on vacations, whatever the fuck they're doing. But just try and say somewhat realistic numbers. If, for example, your suppliers ships to UK within 14 days, say something like 5 to 9 working days. If you ship it within 14 days, it will not be a problem with Shopify, trust me. Then I never tried warming up the support that I will actually be scaling. I was just warming up the accounts, but some of my colleagues did that and it actually worked for them. They just wrote to the Shopify support that, hey, we have this product, we know that we have a fresh store, we will just be loading some amounts of people, and then they asked for some certificates and they allowed for quite some volume from the start. But I don't know, maybe it's just a story and I don't have any proofs for this one. And then another mention that I would say to this rules of thumbs is that no fake reviews or press. I would change it to a more soft, be careful with fake reviews, certifications, or press mentions. There are explicit termination criteria even if you have zero chargebacks, but I never heard of someone getting banned because he has a fake review on the landing page. First one is the most important one. Remember this one. Second one, and you should be really good. Plus the warm-up as well. Alright, but what do you actually do if Shopify has banned you? So as a first step, you must identify what kind of restriction or ban you got. Here are the most common ones with the Shopify. is the payout hold. It's a full freeze during account review, usually tied to some sort of verification. Then is the document request. It's an ID, business registration, bank statement, supplier invoice, proof of fulfillment, termination of Shopify payments. This is a nasty one. The store can stay live with a third-party provider, however. And then it's a full store termination. This is when you can't log in into the dashboard. Shopify has fully canceled the partnership they had with you. There is really no way back from this one, but let's discuss each of them in more details and what you can actually do with them. If you have a payout hold, also identifiable by the red label in the header of the dashboard, usually there is nothing you can do except for wait. Most of the time, Shopify doesn't ask you for additional documents. They just look at how the sales were spread over time, how authentic are the customers, and evaluate the risk of keeping you on the platform. And here I will ask you to pay a bit of extra attention because I have just said the phrase, how authentic are the customers, which maybe for many of you doesn't make perfect sense, but this can be the way you fuck up the warming up process. And imagine you are on the day 12 of warming up, you have already processed somewhere near $400-500 of volume, and then you can get a payout hold or a request for verification because your customers don't look authentic. So basically the way it works is Shopify keeps track of all the customers that have ever checked out with their platform across all the stores that they host, and coming from how dominant they are within the global e-com platform market, which is 10 to 20%, they expect that at least some of your customers' email, shipping, billing, address, or even car details are already present in their database record. 100% fictional customer list usually is a bad sign for Shopify and harms your trust factor, leading to holds and freezes. So basically what it means, if you get lazy and you use just one card for all of your orders, or among your orders you don't have a real customer that has used Shopify before, there is a risk. It doesn't mean necessarily that the warm-up will get fucked up, but there is a risk that you will get a payout hold after the warm-up or during the warm-up phase. The next type of ban or temporary hold that your store can have is a documentation request, which usually comes with a form that has 4 input fields. The document that you upload usually don't matter because they have already decided if they want to keep you or not. However, you can still somewhat affect their final decision. But I will tell you how the reality actually feels. And basically it feels that the decision is based on the factors that I have listed in the previous points, which are the authentic customers, high spikes of volume, or if you fail to add tracking numbers for most of your orders. And so if you get this kind of documentation request, what I usually do is I'm filling up the missing tracking numbers for all of the orders, and the place where I get the shipping numbers is usually track taco or Getty and ship. I really use this one lately. It has a bigger variety and just overall works better for me. So basically the way that I do it, in case I fail to fulfill all the tracking numbers and then I got a documentation request, is I go to this website, I look at the shipping address of the customer, I fill it there as the destination point, usually I select FedEx or DHL, copy the tracking number, just go to the dashboard and fill it, and then for the documentation, I just paste all of these tracking codes into a PDF and submit it amongst other documents in that form. Speaking of my experience, I do all the invoices, I do all the shipping numbers, explanation of the business model, etc. I do it really well, but the statistics show that it's really a 50-50 chance, so you might get a full unblock, or they will just terminate your store entirely after this process. You should always try it anyways. Then is the termination of just the Shopify payments. So this is when you still have access to your store and you can look into the orders, but you no longer can use the Shopify payments and only third-party processors. You can, however, try and appeal this decision with the Shopify support, which will then escalate the case and maybe you will get a second chance. However, the appeals take roughly, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks, and from what I see, it's about 35% of success rate if you have the first time issue. And then if you see the store termination notice, this is when you can't see any details, any orders, anything of your store. then you just know that you have been deep fried and 200 degrees oven baked, so you're basically very cooked. And very rarely you can actually do something with it, and you just move on and try the next Shopify store. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the most often kind of issue that e-commerce owners have with Shopify. However, there are some periods of time when Shopify is just terminating the stores on left and right. If they don't like something, especially before Christmas, before Black Friday and other big sales, they will just have massive waves when they clean out Shopify stores from their platform. What are the alternatives to Shopify Payments and how you can run a high-risk business if Shopify just keeps banning you? So I get this question quite often, and usually my recommendation is simple: do not dive into high-risk merchants unless you have tried Shopify at least 10 times, and this just doesn't work for you. And it will not work for you after 10 or 15 tries only if you are in a super illegal niche or you are just too slow to understand Shopify triggers and gentle structure. One important notice that I have here is that tried 10 times means that you have actually learned something with each ban and put more dedication and knowledge into avoiding it. With every time you must improve your warming up method, chargeback fighting flow, hiding bad things in your listing, and many other things I have mentioned today. It's a very complicated system that you must feel for yourself, and no amount of theory can guide you entirely. If you register 10 stores the same day, start selling on the next day, make $300 to $1,000 on sale in the first week, no fucking wonder you get banned. You might think that you look legit, but Shopify does not trust you by default. Be patient and put effort into it. So yes, Shopify is not easy, especially if you're in not the super white hat niche when you sell the soap that you made in your basement. But if you try long enough and you actually get some information from this video and you ask me some questions, which I'm always willing to help you with, you will be able to manage and do something more interesting on Shopify. So if that didn't convince you yet why you shouldn't use high-risk merchants, I will just list a couple arguments against it. First and foremost is bans and holds for no reason that look and feel like you just got scammed. Complicated onboarding procedure, they usually charge a very high fee for all the processed volume. They have no liability whatsoever. And what I mean by that is that since you agree to their terms when signing up with their most probably unlawful contract, and you are most probably a shady guy that wants to keep the business on the low, hence the high risk in the name, they can and they will be trying new Kama Sutra poses with you, even if you don't give the consent. Just because you're doing some shady stuff and you most probably don't have the legal team and you don't want to take them to the courthouse, and you can take them to the courthouse. But sometimes I have to mention it, these high-risk merchants can be the gold mine. We have tried so many of them that we can't actually recommend any that are currently doing well for a specific niche, because in the end we always most probably get fucked over. However guys, I still made a list of high-risk merchants in case Shopify Payments doesn't want to work with you, you don't understand it. You can try and onboard with these guys. I cannot put my hand in fire for how trustworthy they are, how will they scam you or they will not scam you. Just have a look for these ones. Go one for one, check their website, see the reviews, and try and onboard with them. Most of them have quite a complicated onboarding procedure, and none of them will accept you unless you are a registered business. The only upside that you really have is that you're underwritten upfront, so you're less likely to be frozen mid-scale. This is not a guarantee, however, they just can have a small point in the contract, in the terms that you signed because of being desperate with Shopify Payments, with which they will just freeze all of your money and they will not need to return them to you any soever. So you have some kind of upsides, which I would say is that you get underwritten upfront, which means that they actually do some kind of background check and checks of your store. This is why the onboarding process is much longer and much slower. And so this would imply that they can't just freeze your money mid the scale phase, but this is not given as a granted whatsoever. They can freeze and ban your money whenever they want. These are shady guys working in a shady business. You're a shady person yourself, so players get played. So once again, and I want to be very clear here, unless you're selling I don't know, equipment to enrich uranium isotopes or do-it-yourself kits of kamikaze drones, Shopify Payments will probably work for you. Not from the first, not the second, maybe not even the fifth trial, but if you have a bit of understanding of the warming up process, how to fight the chargebacks, how to fulfill the orders, Shopify will work for you no matter the niche. Alright, and now I believe the really private part of this video is other approaches that we have tried, me and my team, which might work for you. So the first one is cloaking the payments and orchestrating customers into a network of merchants. Here is the scheme, how it approximately look. I will try and explain it to you. What we have done is we have developed a private orchestration tool that is only available within our private community and only we really use it, but the setup really is the following. So as an entry point, you have either a Shopify storefront, a WordPress, a Funnelish. This is the, let's call it dark website, although we are not really selling anything dark. This is where you have your main product, the one that you actually promote. What happens then is we connect an application for Shopify, it's an extension. This one for WordPress, we have a separate extension. For Funnelish, it's more than enough just a JavaScript code. We connect such that all the orders and any attempt of customers to check out, they get directed into the big brain and the router of orders. So at this stage, what we are doing is we are checking the volume processed so far with the merchant options, which is the rightmost column. Then we check which of the associated payment gateways still have some limit for the day. And then we redirect each of these customers to a randomly assigned merchant, whichever of them meets the limit. And so basically, the rightmost column, if it's a Shopify merchant, then it's a website that has some white hat products, but the customer from here never gets to see what actually the products on the store are. They just get sent from the Shopify storefront with the black hat product or gray hat or whatever product you're trying to sell. For example, the NutraBot, he just gets sent directly into the customer checkout with the card already fulfilled. He only needs to fill his card details. It's really as simple as that, but it helps you scale immediately and regulate the volume. And what we can actually do with this setup, depending on how many options we have, this is also a very great solution because it provides you and gives you with a lot of backups. So for example, if the store number A dies today because it was poorly registered or because something happened, we still have 4 options which will get now orchestrated all of the orders, and this will really lower the risks of ban that you have. It's very hard to set up correctly because most of the times Stripe, Shopify or PayPal will get some flags triggered because of the redirect, but we've been working on this solution for some time now and it really works for us. Okay, and then the second solution would be using a registered business instead of personals. This method is the go-to for merchants that don't get you underwritten beforehand, which would be PayPal, Stripe or Shopify. So the approach is really quite straightforward and it's nothing too complicated, although many people really miss it and they still try and do the Shopifys on individuals. It works on lower volumes, but if you want to start and process somewhat significant amounts, you really need to use an LLC or an UK LTD in order to register for Stripe or Shopify. As simple as that. I personally recommend a US LLC in Wyoming or Delaware with a NAICS code that isn't any of the IT or digital business. Having a US LLC is also very useful for a digital business neobank that will actually allow you to create hundreds of cards which you can use to warm up the Shopify or Stripe merchant accounts, which we have spoken in the stage before. And it costs at most $200 and only requires a basic KYS. And UK LTD is a bit more complicated, I would say. It can also be finished and registered entirely online with the help of a registered agent. However, it's slightly more expensive. The verification now it's more complicated. Before it was really cheap to create a UK LTD. It takes longer to apply for it, but you can always have it as a backup or if you need bank transfers in euro, for example. And now the third solution, I got a bit lazy with generating the image for this one, but it's really as simple as that. It's a Hong Kong entity or business. Boom. So why exactly many people actually prefer registering a company with Hong Kong? First and foremost, it has a bigger trust factor, which means that platforms like banks, like Airwallex or Shopify or Stripe, if they see a Hong Kong entity, they will by default have more trust in you. Purely because it's harder to register this one and it implies that you're a local citizen in Hong Kong. They just generally prefer this one more than a US LLC or UK LTD. That ones are just slightly too easy to register. Second, why they do this, it opens gates to new processors. So the second reason why anyone would go through the hassle and actually register a Hong Kong company, a Hong Kong entity, is because it opens the gates to some new processors that are not available for the US LLC or the UK LTD. An example of such, which is one of the most popular for Hong Kong entities right now, is the Taza Pay. You should look into this one. We have never had experience with TazaPay, but I heard some good reviews about this one. Give it a try and let me know how it actually works for you. Once again, you only need to go into this level of the iceberg. And this is my very best attempt at drawing an iceberg. Damn, this sucks. This is this level of the iceberg. So you only really need to go here if the US LLC or the UK LTD didn't work for you. Okay, this one is a bit more complicated. You need probably a team of software engineers or at least somebody who knows how to do it. This one would be somewhere mid into the iceberg, and then the tip would be Stripe and Shopify Payments. But yeah, I usually don't recommend going this deep. You only need to go here once you have some volume and you actually know what the fuck you're doing, and probably if you have connections in one of these merchants that only accept Hong Kong entities. And then the fourth method, which I actually love doing, and it's a very powerful one, is to reverse engineer it. So basically the way it works, you just doom scroll TikTok or Instagram, whatever you're doing. When you see a store that, for example, sells replicas, you stand up from your sofa, you go to the PC, my very best attempt to draw an old school PC. I guess it works. You go to this one, you open Claude, and then with Claude opened, you go to the checkout page. You don't actually even have to view the source code. You copy the link, you put it into Claude, model 4.8 Opus or Fable 5. 9 times out of 10 it will actually find who is behind this payment processor, and that you can actually try and apply with that company. And I will show you an example just now. And so basically guys gave me a link to this website, and it was the first time that I have seen this checkout form, so I copied the link, went to Cloud Code, kindly ask him to look into the code source and actually identify who is processing all the payments. And so the checkout page is built with the most default construct, checkout.com. It's not interesting. But then we see this company, Woody Trade, which I never seen before. And apparently it's some kind of an affiliate partner that will actually give you access to different kind of payment providers, which is quite interesting to me. I will definitely look deeper into this, guys. Maybe we can work with them together. I don't know about it. I don't give any suggestion on this point. They might be scammy as well. And so yeah, I believe this was quite a useful guide. Once again, you have, I believe, most worthy of notice is how to actually fight the main reasons for Shopify account termination, how to correctly do the warm-up, and we also got some insights into the reasons Shopify has banned you, what can you do and what you can't do, some rule of thumb, and then the most popular high-risk processors, why you really shouldn't use them, but if you want, you could, and the most powerful method, which would be this one, reverse engineering, or this one, which really works for us. We scale anywhere to 10,000 in the first 3 days if it's a winning product. It's really realistic with this one, and we usually use near of 8 to 12 Shopify accounts and something like 3 PayPal registered on LTD. So this is more than realistic. If you have volume 10 times less, you can do it with 2 Shopify accounts and just 1 PayPal and 1 Stripe. Really doable. We are not currently selling any spots into the backend router, but you guys can write us and maybe we can discuss about it. Okay, thanks to everyone for watching this video. I believe it was quite useful, and don't hesitate to ask me any questions in the Discord that I have attached in the first comment here. Ciao, ciao.